Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm Jon Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. I'm a past member of the International Progressive MS Alliance Scientific Steering Committee, and currently I'm a district activist leader and trustee for the National MS Society, and I chair the Society's California Government Relations Advisory Committee. I want to thank you and welcome all of you who are joining us on GoToWebinar, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Twitch. About 1/4 of the people diagnosed with MS experience a diminished sense of taste. If left untreated, changes to taste can lead to additional health problems like decreased appetite, weight loss, and even depression. We're being joined today by Susan Barker, Director of Rehabilitation Services at Norton Women's and Children's Hospital and the Norton Specialty Rehabilitation Center at St. Matthew's in Louisville, Kentucky, to talk about changes to your sense of taste in MS and to share some effective strategies to help you manage them. Welcome, Susan. Thanks for being with us today. I think you may be on mute.
Thank you, Jon.
There we go. Alterations to our sense of taste are a primary MS.
Thank you, Jon.
Alterations to our sense of taste are a primary MS symptom that's sometimes overlooked and left untreated. Susan, I hope you'll start us off today by explaining why someone living with MS might experience a loss of taste.
So what really starts it is it really goes back to the myelin and how the fatty sheath with the myelin affects patients when they're affected with the MS disease, and how it attacks that myelin sheath for patients, and that affects their sense of taste. Is really how it, really caused those lesions for patients with MS.
Are there any MRI findings associated with loss of taste in people with MS?
So there have been some studies. The first study was in 2016, and it did show that there have been findings on the MRI directly related to patients with a loss of taste. So there's actual research out there, so people with MS don't have to think, oh my gosh, what is going on. So there is, there's actual proof out there. So that's very positive for people.
If I remember a long ago science class, there are 5 different types of taste, including salt, sweet, sour, bitter, and savory, or umami. Susan, when people with MS experience a change in their sense of taste, do they experience a loss in all 5 types of taste, or can someone experience a loss of a specific type of taste?
So it kind of comes and goes during it, at different times during the disease process. If you're, how sometimes you can have exacerbation with MS. What we have found is that it doesn't affect every sense of, each one of those senses exactly the same. Typically, what we're finding is it is the highest with salty. So it's going to affect that salty taste the most, typically around 32 to 35%, and it's going to be the least with bitter. So unfortunately, your sense of taste for bitter foods is going to stay the highest, and you're going to lose the most with salty. So and then in the others, it's around 20 to 25%. So it does affect them all, some more than others.
And you mentioned that these changes come and go. So none of them are permanent, or can they be permanent?
Throughout, all the different studies and everything, and most of the studies have been related to MRI studies. So they are not definitely permanent. So it does come and go. There's things, that you can do. You might get some of it back, might not get all of it back. So it is not shown that it's been permanent. Now, some people might tell you other things. I've had patients come in and say, no, this is permanent, or I might, but some of it may be related to medication, because, you're on a lot of medication when you are diagnosed with MS. So it's really hard to tell, which one's which.
Do alterations in our sense of taste usually present with changes in our sense of smell as well?
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. When you lose your sense of smell, you can also lose some of your sense of taste, because sit back and think about when you even with someone that doesn't have a diagnosis of MS, when you put a big, piece of chocolate cake in front of you and it's warm with ice cream and all that stuff, what is the first thing you do? I mean, John, what do you do when you have that big? You take a big sniff,
You sure do.
and you're like, oh, that's so good, or lasagna, and you put it in front of you. What is the first thing you do? It's the aroma, and that kind of gets your mouth watering, everything, and that gets you going. So, I mean, they're directly related. I mean, that's part of what we are. So, as a culture, as people, they go hand in hand. So when you lose that sense of smell, it relates to your sense of taste. So, we do go hand in hand.
We heard from Isabella. I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you go right ahead.
Well, we heard from Isabella, a viewer who recently experienced diminished salty taste. And Isabella asked if this could mean that her MS is in fact worsening.
So there is no research that directly relates our taste level to the level, where MS is, if you're in an exacerbation or not. So there is no direct relation that they found under MRI.
We know that some factors like comorbid conditions or even certain medications can actually contribute to a loss of taste. What are some medications that people may be taking to manage MS that could alter their taste sensation?
So some medications out there, Lemtrada, Copaxone, steroids, those are some medications. Anything that's going to cause you to have dry mouth. Dry mouth is directly related to a loss of taste. So I tell all my patients, make sure you have good oral care. But that's anyone. You can just in general, if you don't have saliva, you can't taste. So, I'm trying to think of our other medications, any kind of, even if you have, if you're on pain medication, if you're on, any of your like diuretics, anything like that, any of those kind of medications, antidepressants, all those kind of medications can, and those are things many people are on that do not have a diagnosis of MS as well, or you might have been on and then you find out you have a diagnosis of MS. So your taste could be starting to change, and then you get it, that now you're taking additional medications like Lemtrada on top of it. So now it's just going to add. So
some people with MS may also have other medical conditions like hypertension or diabetes. Can medications for some of these common comorbidities also have the potential to affect taste?
Absolutely, because they also cause those things that I just mentioned, dry mouth. You're already having a little bit of issue with having to stay away from salt, and now you're having decreased taste for salty things because let's say you have hypertension, but now you're thinking I need to salt my foods more because I can't taste salt. You know, what you're kind of in a catch-22. I mean, you could add Mrs. Dash, things like that to flavor your foods better. You know, diabetes, a lot of times your mouth, you're gonna have more of a dry mouth. You know, dry mouth tends to be a huge issue. You know, with the diagnosis of MS, you tend to get warm really easy. So you want, you know, and then you need to hydrate. You know, those are just things that cause a lot of issues. I know in therapy, we find that we have to keep the clinic quite cool because our patients get warm so fast. We have a water cooler, and it's constantly, we're pushing water on everybody. So,
Well, I want to circle back to dry mouth in just a couple of moments, but we've heard from Angela. Now, interesting situation. She says her doctor told her that she could experience changes in taste as a side effect of her new medication, but she wants to know how she can tell whether these changes in taste are due to that medication or could they be a new MS symptom?
so I would say she needs to, number one, she would need to double check with her pharmacist and see, you know, with her medication, is that truly, you know, look at the onset of when she started to take it. It would really depend on what that medication is, and really kind of see when she started taking it, you know, what the level of the medication is, you know, with her buildup, how long it takes for that medication to build up for her, and really look at prior to taking it, where was she, what were the, you know, were the symptoms she had prior to starting to take it? You know, was she having any issues? You know, how was she feeling? What was she eating? You know, she's going to have to really do a food diary and see, so she can see, where was she? What was she tasting? Did she have a difference before? And what is she tasting different now? I mean, she'd really have to do a food diary and see.
Well, let's talk about what people can do to preserve or even improve their sense of taste. Are there medical treatments that can help changes in taste?
Really, what you really would need to do is to, you know, keep that oral hygiene good. Medically, I mean, there are some not really medications. There, you know, they say, you know, you could take, there's some vitamin supplements out there, but you really want to check with your physician before you start taking those, and make sure they're not going to interfere with anything you're taking already. You know, you can just season your foods really well. I don't typically just say like which vitamins to take right offhand, because I want everybody to check with their physician before they start adding a lot of vitamin supplements to their foods. But you know, seasoning is fantastic. You know, it doesn't hurt anything to add, like I mentioned, Mrs. Dash, things like that. If you like spicy, it's fantastic to add spices to your foods. You know, extra, you know, if you start to taste that metallic taste, some people do, I recommend switching to plastic silverware, because your silverware could be a culprit, because you're going to taste that metallic silverware quickly, things like that. But definitely double check, you know, there are some vitamin supplements you can add that will definitely help.
Are there things that are known to affect taste that people should avoid?
Your biggest culprit, like I mentioned, is if you're dehydrated, and that, you know, those medications, those type of things, but you can't avoid your medications for MS. You can't avoid, you know, you've got to do what you need to do to keep yourself healthy. You want to, you know, it's, you know, and if you get, when I know I've mentioned oral care a lot, but there are some things out there like, there's the dry biotin, you'll see it a lot out there. and it's a gel and a mouthwash. And a lot of times if you use that, it will rehydrate you and your taste will get much better. But if you can do the sweet and the salty and things like that, it will bring in that sour to your mouth, and it will help re-energize your taste buds.
What health problems might people experience as a result of alterations in their sense of taste, and how can they best be managed?
You could end up with failure to thrive. You just due to not wanting to eat because you're not hungry because you can't taste. So with that weight loss, things like that, you can end up with you could end up with diabetes and things like that because you're eating the wrong things because you can't taste them. So you might taste that, sweet, things like that, where you can't taste the salty. So you're kind of migrating towards the things you can taste versus the things you can't taste. So it's very important to still try to eat those balanced meals to stay healthy. So talk to your physician, talk to your dietitian, talk to, and keep eating what you should eat, even though it's difficult because it doesn't taste well. And be open, when things don't taste well and they start to taste off, talk to somebody so that you can still get those things in so that, you're not stopping eating or you're not eating the wrong things, because you've got to eat to keep your nutrition up so that you can, work through, what's going on and stay healthy and stay strong. Because you know what? You are a person with MS. MS is not you. So you know what? You can get through this. We're going to make it through. I mean, these taste buds, you know what? They're just in your mouth. It's for so long, nobody spoke about it, that their taste was crazy and all over the place. And it's happened to people for years. And you know what? My dad his taste was all over the place, and we worked through it. He thought I was crazy, but we made it through. And he loved to eat. He was an eater, and we figured it out. So, I mean, everybody can do it. So.
Well, I think one of our viewers, Becky, is looking at the best way to do it. She wants to know if her MS specialist can help her manage a recent loss of taste. And she wonders whether it's helpful to also be working with a nutritionist to manage this loss of taste.
Absolutely. To help her balance and know what to eat, my background, kind of how I mentioned, is I'm a speech pathologist. So I helped, my patients that were having trouble getting their food in and down. And I work a lot with nutritionists and dietitians to help my, patients, know how much to have on their plate and make sure they're getting enough in. They help know, okay, I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat a massive amount. I'm tired. It doesn't taste great. They help you know how to bulk it up. So your nutritionist helps you know, okay, let's do a protein shake and then a meal of this much, let's add this to this and this to that. So a nutritionist is a fantastic resource to have. Fantastic.
You've actually mentioned dry mouth a few times during our conversation, and I did want to circle back. I'm hoping you can share some strategies. I know you've already started to answer this question, but maybe share some strategies to best manage dry mouth. Are there medications that might help treat dry mouth?
I know that there are some medications out there, and if you need a medication, I'm right there. I will tell you, reach out to your physician for a medication. But I'm definitely a big advocate for if you can get it over, when it comes to dry mouth, over the counter and manage it. The best things you can do is clean your mouth 3 times a day, and that would be brushing your teeth, your tongue, the roof of your mouth, under your tongue, This comes from my almost 20 years of being a speech pathologist. Scraping your tongue. And anyone can do that without going to the doctor. And then cleaning your toothbrush in a small cup with a solution of hydrogen peroxide and water. Do not put that hydrogen peroxide and water in your mouth, because your toothbrush has to be clean before you use it the next time. So you're not putting that bacteria back in your mouth. But it's fine to brush your teeth with your regular toothpaste. But it's very important to clean that toothbrush in between and then rinse it under water. And then that will help make sure your mouth is free of all that bacteria the next time you brush. And then I mentioned those dry mouth products. One product they sell at all drugstores is Biotene, and right next to it they have the Walgreens brand, the Dollar General brand of that same thing that will be right there next to it, but you'll find it. You could never find it anywhere, at Walmart or anywhere, but it's right there. It's called Dry Mouth, and they have mouthwash, they have a gel, they have a spray. You can carry it in your pocket or your purse, and that stuff people will tell you, is magical. You put it in your mouth and you will feel fantastic. And you just spray it in there, and slowly your mouth will just feel great. And that is my free advice on how to take care of your own dry mouth without having to add medication to your toolbox. So there it is.
Well, you've shared a lot of really helpful insights about taste and MS. What would you say are the top 3 takeaways that you'd like our audience to remember?
Obviously, clean your mouth. That will help a lot. Season your foods and know what medications you're taking. So just read the little pamphlet so you know if they're supposed to cause you issues, so you can keep kind of a little bit of some notes so you can let your physician know, and you are knowledgeable if they're causing issues, so that you can find out if you need to have a nutritionist and get help. But definitely in the long run, as long as you season your foods, eat, keep your mouth clean.
Well, thank you for sharing your expertise on this topic, Susan. Let's continue answering a couple more questions from our viewers. We heard from Alexander, who lives with MS, and he's had COVID-19. And while Alexander had COVID-19, he said he lost his sense of taste and smell. And after 3 months, he says he still has this metallic taste in his mouth, and he's wondering whether that may be due to COVID-19 or is it due to his MS?
To be honest, that's a hard one. We've had a lot of people, and we're still seeing them at our facility that are having those long-term taste alterations. COVID's been a very interesting diagnosis with that metallic taste. We'd probably have to look and see is he on that medication question. We'd look at his medication list and kind of see what are his medications he's taking. And I'd probably do kind of a taste kind of analysis on him, and kind of go in and trigger his taste buds and see kind of where the metallic taste is at, and see if any of his true taste buds on his tongue, are off, and see if we could kind of figure that out with him, or have him do that wherever he is and where he's living at.
Danica wrote in, and she's asking if there are foods she should avoid to protect her sense of taste.
No, I don't know. I think, you've got to stimulate those taste buds, all the time. They're there. I've not found that you can protect them.
Janice wrote in saying that she's read about using garlic, ginger, and castor oil to improve her sense of taste, and she wants to know if there's any research to support these natural treatments.
I have not seen any research on those, But people do a lot of things, and a lot of different herbal. There's a lot of herbal remedies out there, and I mean, it may work in some cultures. I mean, I don't knock different cultures that have some pretty interesting stuff out there, but I have not seen any true research on that.
Sebastian wrote in asking if vitamin D complex supplements could help with loss of taste.
So I have seen not vitamin B, but I have seen, kind of when I alluded earlier, that there are some vitamins out there that do help with the loss of taste. It was not vitamin B though. And that's kind of when I said reach out to your physicians, because there are some vitamins that I have seen that help, but it was not vitamin B.
Well, I want to thank everyone who submitted questions, and thank you for being with us today, Susan.
Thank you.
Before we close, I want to remind you that the National MS Society's MS Navigator team is your best partner when it comes to connecting you to the very best information and resources on living with MS. You can reach an MS Navigator by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. For information and resources on MS, please visit the Society's website. You'll find research updates and news, information on connection programs like self-help groups and MS Friends, ways for you to get involved, and upcoming events that are taking place near you. Remember, you can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I hope you'll join me every week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where I continue the conversations that we start here. You'll find the Real Talk MS podcast at realtalkms.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'd like to thank Susan Barker for joining us today. Please remember that a recording of this webinar will be available at the Society's website at nationalmssociety.org/MSexpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join us at this same time for next week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. You can always find our upcoming program topics on the National MS Society's website. And now I have a favor to ask each of you. Getting your feedback on today's webinar is important, so you'll see a survey pop up in a moment when we close out the webinar. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, you'll see that link pinned to the comments section. On YouTube, you'll find that link in the program description. Completing the survey makes a real difference. The information you provide helps us to continuously improve, and it helps shape future programs. The survey takes just 1 minute, so I hope you'll take a minute to fill it out. On behalf of Susan Barker and the National MS Society, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Please stay safe and make healthy choices.